All right. So another Monday, another 8 p.m., and another quick bites with HR bites. Today, unlike most Mondays when I'm absolutely relaxed, very, very comfortable, today I'm a tad bit nervous. And the reason I'm nervous is because of two factors. The first reason why I'm nervous tonight, my dear friends,
The first reason why
is
friend
because technology just seems to be playing up. My guest
seems to be
tonight
playing out.
logged in at 7:30
Log-
p.m. and we were doing a dry run and we were testing sound and we were looking at the lights and all of that and everything was brilliant. Only to realize at 5 to 8 technology played up and we got disconnected and things weren't working out. That's reason number one. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we had this live going on beautifully and we're able to get to you, our guest, tonight. The second reason why I'm nervous tonight is because the individual that I'm going to bring on stage in a short while from now is someone who completed his formal education way before I was even born, is someone who I have grown up watching on stage, off stage, on social media, is someone who, when I started teaching, I would actually show his videos to my students and draw analogies and examples from his videos to say, this is how you build perspective. This individual is someone who started off his career doing various things and then forayed into HR and L&D and is now ruling the space of transformation through his wonderful contributions. This individual is someone who is actually going to give us perspective on global capability centers and how GCCs are powerhouses and how India is playing a very pivotal role as far as GCCs are concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together virtually if you have logged in and are listening to this live. Apologies for the delay to get started, but tell us which city you've logged in from, which platform you are on, because we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on Instagram because we are cognizant that our listeners and our followers are across all platforms. So, without further ado, I have the absolute pleasure of bringing my guest tonight on stage, Anand Pillai.
Thank you, Sahil, for having me. And wow, thank you for those kind words. Yes, this is when I got reminded that Murphy was an optimist. You and I, half an hour before we started, and I'm on my second laptop, which was not even used for, I don't know, 5 months. And the battery is kind of thing. I had to get my charger, all sorts of things. But I'm so glad that we are here. And I'm so glad that we started on this note because technology is always everybody's best friend or the worst enemy.
Best friend or the worst enemy? Brilliant.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love technology, and the reason why I love technology is because sometimes it works. And in our GCCs, to put our context, this is what is kind of enabling them to be where they are physically away and yet connected through technology. And
Absolutely.
I'm waiting
Anand, can you
to
be a little louder, Anand? Is it possible if you come slightly
yeah,
closer to the
definitely,
laptop or be a little louder?
definitely, definitely. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
better. This is much better.
wonderful, wonderful. So I'm basically saying I'm looking forward to this interaction. And as we mentioned, technology can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And GCCs actually originated or are having a reason for being because of technology. Had it not been for technology, this entire concept would not have existed.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for this interaction, looking forward to how we can deep dive into this wonderful topic that we have collectively chosen, how to make GCCs as the powerhouse, which is the dream when they start a GCC, and that is what reality is for a large number of GCCs.
Absolutely. And Anand, I must give it up to your agility that when everything was perfect at 7:30 p.m. and then this hit, you very quickly got another laptop and got it charged up and managed to get the Wi-Fi connected. And even though there was a couple of minutes of delay, fingers crossed, I'm so happy we are having this conversation. So thank you for that,
Wonderful.
Anand.
Let's start. Let's start.
Anand, very long ago, I had read this WhatsApp joke, if I remember, saying that the ability to connect the laptop to the projector is inversely proportional to the hierarchy in the organization. So they say, and again, it's a joke, so we take it as a joke. But what is your take on that? Your technology can be your best friend or your worst enemy. How do you keep technology in your good books rather than on the final day, great town hall, you're connecting with your GCC and you're connecting with partners across seven oceans and technology fails? How does one keep technology in control? Possible, not possible. There will be a bad day. Murphy will wake up from his grave. What will happen, Anna?
Yeah, see, the way to get this thing foolproof, if I may use the word, is let the IT team do their job. See, I've connected this from my home. Now, if this problem had occurred when I was in my office, I would not have bothered about changing the laptop, restarting, doing all that. I would have just called up my IT person, and he or she would have come. And I'm not exaggerating, in seconds, if not more than a minute, they would have resolved the problem.
Right.
Okay. Now, I really do not know. My parallel laptop is kind of still restarting. I really do not know. And I'm glad I do not know, because that's not my area of expertise. Our area
Brilliant.
of expertise is different. So, GCCs, they have a very robust help desk team or robust IT center. I was in Steve Jobs Theater in Cupertino a few
Okay.
years ago. Oh boy, I tell you, I mean, it is an experience for you to, there are certain things in life that you can never understand through second-hand experience. I've seen videos, I've seen YouTube, but I had this luxury and the privilege of being there in the front. And because I knew somebody in Apple, I then asked them, how many guys are there behind this to put this entire thing in place? I thought it'll be 5, 10 people. And I was shocked. It was a few hundred.
Wow. A
So,
few
you know,
hundred people behind the Steve Jobs auditorium and the whole setup.
yeah, whole setup, because everybody gets to have a customized experience of what they're going through. And this is true in many of the, not many, but all of the GCCs that I'm working with. They have a robust IT team, and IT is the backbone, it is the central to what they are doing. So that comes with technology being an enabler, and it is a key enabler.
Correct. Anand, we've
About that
actually seen
inversely proportional.
GCCs. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
About- Yeah, about that inversely proportional, I don't know. I mean, it's good in the lighter vein, but I would say it is directly proportional to the level of competence that is there with the IT team. Go
Right.
ahead, you had a
That's
question.
true. That's true. No, no, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I actually wanted to, ask you, since you've been associated with GCCs for a very long time now. We've really seen this journey of how India has become the hot spot for GCCs initially because there was a cost arbitrage. And today, from a cost arbitrage, we've actually seen so many GCCs mature and evolve into innovation hubs. Given that this is a quick bite with HR Bites kind of podcast, can you give us a quick bite in a couple of sentences or a couple of minutes on the evolution of the journey of GCCs in our country from being cost centers or driving cost arbitrage to actually being innovation hubs today and taking to the world what the world never expected from us, but we are delivering today?
Thank you, Sahil. See, if you look back, see the word GCCs possibly was coined formally, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago. But the concept existed about 25 years ago, or even more than that. So if you look at, I mean, I work for HL Technologies for a very long time, or IT companies were servicing clients. So initially, they were having what is known as an ODC, or an offshore development center.
Mm,
Then many of the clients, they wanted to have certain what they called dedicated environment. They wanted a dedicated security, because in the earlier days when offshore development center was there, in a particular building you will have 10 offshore development centers in 10 different floors. Many companies were not happy about that, understandably. So they said we want a dedicated one. Now, in some cases, in the early days, it was dedicated floors, and as it evolved, it became dedicated buildings, and they were called DODCs, dedicated offshore development center. That dedicated offshore development center initially was only dedicated from an IT point of view, and the people were dedicated for that particular project. Later on, that particular entity became so very customized and dedicated, it became an extended arm of whichever company, Cisco or Juniper Networks or American Express or JP, whoever it is, that they started, the parent company said, we want the look and feel of the place also to be the same, the carpet, the coloring, everything. They went one step further, and that is where the game changer happened. We don't want just the look and feel. We want the people also to have the same capability, the same competence as anybody else across another center.
right.
So if there is a center in India and their parent company is in San Jose, the people on the call should not be able to differentiate who is where. Their capability to understand the problem, their capability to resolve the problem, not just technically, but even business wise. So
Mhm.
they evolved into, and that's where this word capability center came in. So you have a location agnostic center, which initially, as you nicely put it, they came for cost arbitrage, then they went in for value arbitrage, and now they are an innovation hub. Sometimes, not sometimes, in quite a few situations, they even dedicate centers. Say, for example, the Poland center will be innovation for something. The India Chennai center will be innovation for some area. The Bangalore center will be for some area. And there are quite a few of the GCCs who have more than one centers. So they would say, listen, one particular practice will have an innovation in this center and so on. So they have, well, I think you also used it in your promotion, COEs, centers of excellence. So they want to focus on centers of excellence here so that they build expertise around that particular innovation vertical.
Correct. Yeah. Brilliant. I think Anand, you've given us the entire landscape so beautifully from cost arbitrage to value arbitrage to now looking at innovation hubs. And just the way the whole concept from ODCs moved to GCCs because the focus was on capability. And this actually makes me think that given that capability became the key focus, continues to remain the key focus, what's your perspective on the kind of talent wars that have been happening? Because as many people that are passing out every year from educational institutions, we all know that not all of them are employable, right? Very often we have this debate to say, is employability a challenge? And my answer to that has always been that I don't think employability is a challenge. I think being employable is the challenge. So, what's your take on the talent wars between the GCCs, between the startup environments, between MNCs? Everybody is trying to poach the same talent. While there are people everywhere, talent is very difficult to find. So, what's your take on that, Anand?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. The biggest war, as everybody says, that is going on in the world is the war for talent. I mean, let us be bluntly clear about it. And it is not just in India. A lot of people have got what I would call the India bashing mentality. India has got the world's largest number of technically trained manpower. India has also got the world's largest number of technically trained unemployed manpower, and so on. So I'll tell you one thing. Let us be bluntly clear. If this problem was addressed in US, we would not have GCCs outside of US. The fact is there is a
Very
talent
true.
shortage there. The fact is
Correct.
talent shortage everywhere. So they are moving, initially they moved to lower cost economies. Okay. Now, if you look at it, for example, manufacturing moved to a low cost economy like China. But the cost of operations in that particular entity also will go up. Unless they move up the value chain, their reason to exist there will not be there. If you remember in the earlier days, the contact centers or the call centers, they came into India. Now they were lower cost. I mean, India became costly after some time. Now they went into Philippines and Poland and Mexico and so on. Cost arbitrage can only be an initial strategy. It can never be a sustainable strategy. It has to be not just value arbitrage, it has to be talent arbitrage. When it
Hmm.
comes to talent, now I go back one step further or one step backward. Today, I can guarantee, and I'm sure our Western counterparts will agree, on a scale of 1 to 10, in the technical competency, our Indian folks, whether in India or in US, will be anywhere between 8 to 9. But
Hmm.
there are two other towers, the business competency and the behavioral or leadership competence. When it comes to the business competency, there I think we are lacking.
Hmm.
Understanding the business, very good technology, nerds, but if you're talking about a retail practice, if you're talking about an airline practice, if you're talking about an aerospace practice, understanding what technology they are doing for the business that they are doing and correlating that is where there is a challenge. And this is where the DODCs are really helping out, or the global capability centers are helping out. But the bigger one is not just the business competency, the behavioral competency. Their ability to think outside the boxes and go into the business domain and really see where that is. And that is where the differentiator is coming. And I'm glad, happy to say that this problem is addressed by a large number of people very successfulully. Technical track, they're not worrying, although there is a boot camp and so on. The business track is getting better. In the early days for the GCCs, almost all of them put an expat, somebody who's been there in the US, to come and become the GCC or the center head. Now they are recruiting people locally, and they are on par,
Hmm.
if not even better, than their other parts. So if you look at the three competency tracks, the technical track, the business track, and the behavioral track, we were lacking in the business track, we were lacking in the behavioral track, and I'm glad to mention this in the past tense. We are not like, and that's where companies like us are really focused. I'm not focusing on the business. That is a domain expert. For example, if it is BFSI, somebody from the banking, finance, and insurance. If it is TTL, travel, transportation, and logistics, somebody from that industry. If it is somewhere from the aerospace or airline or energy and utilities, that is a business vertical. But the horizontal is the behavioral one, managerial and leadership competency, and that cuts across verticals. And I'm glad I mentioned that in the past tense. A large number of successful GCCs who are moving up the value chain have cracked that code really very well. And companies like us and individuals like me are solving that. We are partnering with the GCCs. We are partnering with the center head. I'm a coach to many center heads, and I'm really working along with them and their second line reportees to get into that business, behavioral track on par across the centers.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think that's really nice and gives us a much more clearer understanding of the various tracks and competencies and how the war for talent is playing out. But that actually makes me think, Anand, do you see a little bit of a brain drain? Because would India center versus say a center in the US or in London have a differential on
Sorry, I lost.
compensation? Anand, are you with us? Anand,
I
with
can't get your
us?
last question. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it one more time. I was saying, can you hear me now? Okay. I was asking you a question on the brain drain from India. When you talk about the whole behavioral leadership track, do you see a lot of brain drain from India to the West because there's a difference in compensation, or do you see uniformity in total rewards? And how is that playing out? Are GCC leaders more ingrown? Are they bred more in India, or do you have a lot of foreign counterparts coming into India to lead GCCs? How is this? How has the leadership landscape changed? Because you do a lot of work in the leadership space.
Wonderful. See, the leadership space in the beginning, when I say beginning, about 8 to 10 years ago, was almost all expats of Indian origin, but expats. In the beginning, they were even of Caucasian origin or whatever, local origin. But in the last, I would say, definitely 5 years, post 2020, I'm seeing a lot of local recruits who are becoming center heads. But the advantage that they've had is they've been a center head in another company. So they're moving. It's just like the big five. You're one of the big five, Where do you poach from the other big four, kind of a thing. So the center heads have been center heads of other GCCs. I have not seen situations of a person who has got the other capability, but he or she moving into the business or the center head position without having played that role before. So there is a lot of homegrown talent, and that homegrown talent is coming across very mature manner, and that is a good news. And coming back to one other question that you asked is the compensation.
Yeah,
See, the
yeah,
compensation, almost all the companies, when they give, particularly for the leadership, not the one below, particularly for the leadership, they have got what is known as a location agnostic pay. So, whether you are based in Singapore or in Shanghai or in Hong Kong or in London or in Stockholm or in whichever part of US, your pay is more or less the same. There is a geography factor which is linked to the living allowance or CLA, cost of living. So if you're in a particular high cost entity, you might get a geography multiplier which is zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3 or whatever, and you can even get a lesser thing. For example, if you are in India, for want of an example, you may get a zero point 0.8 multiplier. So rather than 1.2, you may get zero point 0.8 of that. But this is largely within that particular space, maximum 50 basis points difference.
got it. Anand, I want to also move to something very tactical because this is a question that's just popped up on my phone right now on WhatsApp, saying that can you explain to us the basic difference between digitization and digitalization? I think many a times people get very confused with these words. So there's a very basic question, but I think it's important because all kinds of people will be listening to this podcast. So the basic difference between digitization and digitalization.
Digitization is, for example, your phone itself has got the capability to digitize any document. You can scan, you can do anything. So rather than in an analog form, you are having it in a digital form. Okay. So, for example, today, I don't carry any of my documents in the analog form. I don't in my analog form. Tomorrow I'm going to Gurgaon. I can guarantee I'll not be carrying my driving license. I'll not be carrying my Aadhaar card. RC, nothing. All in my DigiLocker. They are all digitized. If you remember in the time where we had physical share certificates, they were all dematerialized. So that is digitization. Okay, rather than reading a book it in the digital form. So digitization happened before. Okay, now digitalization or digital transformation is the back end that enables to do this. Today, for example, anybody from the West, when they come to India, they see the massive leaps and bounds of digital transformation that has happened in our country. You don't carry physical currency, you do your UPI. For example, just after COVID, I went to various places. I did not have to have my COVID vaccination certificate with me. All that I had to show, whichever office I went to, which had this hybrid setup, I had to show my Arogya Setu app, login and show. And it will tell where I have been, have I been in the proximity of a thing. That is not digitalization. That is not digitization. That is, entire thing is digitalized. So our UPI is digitalized. Our Aadhaar card is digitalized. Initially, the document was digitized, but the digital transformation is what enables these documents to be used interchangeably or these transactions to be done interchangeably. And that is a leap forward. Any scanning company, with all due respects, can do digitization. But digitalization or digital transformation requires a completely different ecosystem. If I were to break it down, it requires definitely an IT infrastructure. It definitely requires a business infrastructure. It also requires a kind of a culture. There was a time when the policeman, if he caught me on the road, he will not let me go without me producing my driver's license.
Correct.
Today, even if I produce my driver's license, if it does not have the new generation driver's license with the QR code, he will say, no, 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 give me the QR code, because he's got a device in his hand which has to scan that whatever QR code. So there is a
Right.
digital infrastructure that is there, which is enabling all these digitized documents to be currency. So in a nutshell,
Brilliant.
digitization is basically photocopying or digitizing it. Okay, scanning. That is 30 years old, if you ask me. If you remember the fax machine, what the fax machine was actually doing was it was sending the digitized photograph. That is old technology. But seeing that photograph, for example, my best example of digitization and digitalization is our travel. For example, your whatever Digi you know, Digi has also evolved. I don't know if you have traveled recently. In the early days, I'm talking about early days, about 3 months ago, I had to take my phone with the QR code and keep it there.
Yeah.
You know what
Now you don't
happened?
have to do
I
that.
went to Bangalore and I
Now
said,
facial
you don't
recognition.
have my face
Yeah.
itself. My face has
Yeah.
got where I'm going, everything has got. And this is the best. Digi is the best example of digitalization. This is not even
Absolutely.
available in US. So you will have to
Absolutely.
scan your actual card. I mean, actual
Yeah.
ticket.
Boarding
Here we don't
pass.
have
Boarding pass. Yeah.
boarding
Here you
pass. You
don't
have
need
to
your
do
boarding pass.
nothing.
Here
You
just
need.
through your face. Once it's on Digi Yatra, you can just walk through security.
My Aadhaar card is there in that. My whatever. Since my Aadhaar card is there, all the other details are there. But because that is scanned through DigiYatra, it also knows where I am going. Hypothetically, I'm saying, if I were to board the wrong aircraft, unfortunately, that is there only for the airport entry. A few of the airlines have got DigiYatra check-in in the ultimate gate. So you can just walk in, and if I were to walk in the wrong gate, it will tell you no. Even though
No
my face is
access.
recorded, it will no access. Very similar to
Yeah.
the ticket or the boarding pass not
Correct.
being accepted. So that is an example of thing, and I am proud, really, because I travel the world over. This kind of digitalization of common services is not there anywhere.
Absolutely. And in fact, Anand, you'll be very happy to know, I don't know whether you know this or not, someone had actually raised a concern on privacy, because the moment you put everything on Digi Yatra and you come to the the boarding gate at the airport building, when you walk through, it showcases your name, and that name
Yes.
stays there for around 4 or 5 seconds while you walk through. And
No,
someone
not
said, I
only
don't
name.
want 5 people seeing my name.
Yes. No, that was available even otherwise. No. That was
No, no, I'm
available
saying the
even otherwise.
name is there on the scanner. So now
That
they
is
have
there
removed the
when the
name.
boarding pass was scanned also. No. That is there when the boarding
Correct.
pass was scanned also.
No, I'm saying it was there earlier, it is there now also, but now in certain airports they've removed the name. And what comes
Yes.
up when you walk through is only your seat number.
Correct. Or
So,
your
which is
airline.
also taking privacy into concern so that your name doesn't get flashed.
Yeah.
So, Anand, actually taking this conversation ahead, how do you see the future of GCCs? We've spent a lot of time discussing the journey so far, but how do you see the future of GCCs from a digital transformation perspective? Any kind of use case that you can share with us, which is either under wraps or that you see as the future, which is a wish list on your cards right now?
Yeah. My client agreements will not allow me to mention the name of the client
You
or
can
the
maintain the
details of the.
confidentiality, you can
Yeah.
maintain whatever
What I
NDAs are
can
there.
say is, if you
Yeah.
look at 5 years ago, we were there. I mean, I hate to use this particular analogy, but I'll use it anyway. Master slave. So the master would be the parent company. The slave would be the whatever GCC in India, Mexico, or in Poland, or Philippines, or wherever. Now, that kind of equation, even if you want to use the hub and spoke thing, that kind of equation is gone in a large number of evolved GCCs. So it's quite common for a GCC of a particular company which is actually headquartered in some part of US or some part of Europe, that GCC in India, whichever part, whether Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, or even Chennai or Gurgaon, that GCC could become the lead for that particular practice, and that can in turn have the spokes. So, forget the master slave, that can become the hub, and others can become the spoke. This is a
Hmm.
new thing that has happened in the last 2 to 3 years. Earlier, it was always linked to that parent company. Now you are having these centers of excellence, and I really like that word. We have overused it or misused it, but in every sense, center for excellence for that particular practice is Chennai. Center for that excellence for that particular company, for that particular practice is Poland or Bangalore or wherever. So, this is where we are really blending our local expertise with the capability of the people. So this is something that is new, and if this becomes the order of the day, I can guarantee, I mean, right now we have got about 2,000 GCCs. I can guarantee this will multiply, not even multiply, it will exponentiate if this kind of a thing happens. See, the real estate people were the first ones to do this in a different way. I don't know if you know, it was called BTS, built to suit. So they will say that this particular project is built to suit, and because of advanced construction technology, they will bring up that building exactly the same way as in San Jose or in Chicago or in New York or in Stockholm, built to suit. But that built to suit physical infrastructure, I am proud that a large number of organizations are having that capability from a leadership point of view. So, the leadership competence that is existing in any one of the GCCs is on par, if not better, from any other. But where they are differentiating themselves is not in their level of leadership competency, is in which area they are focusing, they are evolving, and getting into that centers of excellence where they are collaborating with other GCCs, and courtesy technology, they're able to do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Earlier you spoke about saying that they wanted the color of the walls to be the same, the chairs to look the same, the replica of the office in a different geography. Um, Tell me a little bit about the culture and the employee experience. How do you balance global standards with local flavors? Right? Because a GCC is not like a burger of a certain retail outlet that the burger will be the same across the world, right? There will be local flavors. So, how does one balance that from a culture perspective? You've done a lot of work in the space of culture. So, tell us a little bit from culture and from an employee experience point of view.
See, from a culture point of view, there is one phrase that is kind of used very nicely, and that phrase is blend with the local culture without losing your identity. Okay,
Hmm.
without naming any company. Okay, if you look at it, that company has got a GCC in India. Okay, that company has got a certain culture. Okay, and because not from a GCC point of view, I'm giving an example only to illustrate a point. And that point is, let us say, for example, IKEA. Okay. IKEA as a company has got one core competency or one core part of their culture, which is frugality. Wherever they are, frugality is their middle name. It is so strong in their culture and ingrained that even the CEO will not fly business class if it is not necessary. Frugality. Why are they having that? They are having that because that is their culture. That is what differentiates. Because if they were not frugal, they will not be able to make those value for money products. Okay. Now, having said that, we actually had that situation a few decades ago when I was in one of the technology companies. So they came to India, and we fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which way you look at it, it was the festival that we just now celebrated, Holi. So we were throwing colors, and and those days, and I'm talking about, this was about almost 20 years ago. Those days, these bio-friendly or green
Organic, organic
organic
colors.
was not there. So you had to literally discard that clothes. Literally discard. Now you can discard your clothes, but you can't discard your face. Because your face is having that green or red or whatever it is, or blue or multicolor, and you'll have to use special shampoos and all that. So they got very upset. And once we, talked about it, they said, "Oh, we're so glad, we are having this. We're blending with our culture, but we don't want to lose our identity." So you keep your core aspect of it wherever you go. But the local identity has to be imbibed, as long as it does not compromise or as long as it does not contradict that. Now, from a value point of view, what is that? I mean, just it's a rounding of error. That particular organic dyes and whatever else. But the fact that you got involved in that process made you part of the system. If hypothetically you are not got involved in the process, you are so tight, regimented, that you're not going to have a good, cordial working relationship. And Sahil, you're aware of this fact. You go to Chennai or you go to Bangalore, or from there you come, you'll have to blend with the local culture.
True.
So the GCCs, what they have done very, very well is they have had the blend of the parent company's culture, core values they will never ever compromise, but they will have a local flavor. I've had really interesting situations. In one particular situation, I had to go to a GCC in Hyderabad after 2 days, in Chennai after 2 days, in Bangalore. Now, whatever you said about the color and all that, it is the same, the seat and all that, it is the same. But when I go into that entire center, there is a local flavor. But the local flavor is only on the periphery issues. On the core issues,
Mm.
it is whatever it is. So the
Beautiful.
HR playbook is the same. The
Yeah.
rewards and recognition is the same. Okay. In some parts, for example, there's one particular GCC. It is based in Singapore, and they have got a dating allowance as part of the HR allowance. Now, in India, I mean, you don't have to give money for dating. Yeah? And the guys will date anyway, you know. So, but that same thing is not available anywhere else. So, there are certain local flavors that are there that is available. I mean, I still remember when I was with the Tatas, I mean, I was having an engagement with Tisco, the MIS manager. In those days, I was still a bachelor. And so, as I was sitting with him, he said, Anand, give me some time. I have to fill some forms. I'll finish it. I've started it, and you'll come. Give me some time. So I said, okay, no problem. And, his table was near me, and I could not help overlooking what he was doing. He was filling the, childbirth thing, or pregnancy and post pregnancy, the birth and hospitalization and everything for his daughter. Now, I'm also a Tata employee. I was also a Tata employee, and I'm going to Tisco, which is also a Tata company. you know so I said, sir, pardon for me for asking, isn't our HR policy clear that the moment a child gets married, he or she is not a dependent anymore? And why are you filling in? And he is filling that under his company's policy.
Insurance,
So yeah,
insurance. Huh?
yeah, so insurance. I said, why is your daughter covered under this insurance? She is no longer a dependent. He said, Anand, are you married? I said, no, I'm not married. And he basically gave one sentence: you get married and you'll know. I said, no, I'm not going to wait for that long to know. I mean, I want to know now, yeah, as I'm sitting with you. In another few minutes, we're going to carry a business conversation. He said, our company respects the culture where the girl, for her childbirth, first childbirth particularly, all the expenses are paid by the father. And the father is an employee of the company. And therefore, it goes out of his pocket. So they made a special system for certain people, even though the person is become an independent after marriage. Particularly for the girl, for the first child, the entire childbirth expenses, delivery expenses, are borne by the parent, or the who's an employee of the company. I said, wow, that's
Parent.
a beautiful
Got
blend.
it.
And I was working for a multinational arm of Tatas, so they did not have that facility, both Tatas. So, and this is exactly what is happening in the GCCs. The reason why I gave that age-old example is I can't give examples of my GCCs because there are a lot of policy, privacy. But this is a very good example for us to understand how they blend with the local culture without losing their identity. And whatever was that extra allowance that was given for that employee to blend with the
Yeah.
local culture, it made him feel good. Now look at the employee engagement of that particular employee. Look at that employee commitment of that employee. Look at the feeling. And there is a box of sweets sent by the company for the naming ceremony.
Beautiful. Nice. True. I think, Anand, over the years, if I have to just look at our own country, right, the ease of doing business has actually become even better, right? Of course, it's very clearly said that in certain countries in the world, you can open a company in 24 hours and in certain countries it takes 24 days, right? But how does the regulatory and the compliance landscape work when it is about scaling up GCCs? Tell us a little bit about that, and what kind of leadership competencies play out very effectively, because doing business is one aspect, but the regulatory aspect could be a very different ball game. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are two things. First thing is the scaling up from an infrastructure point of view. So if you have got a 500 seat center, I mean, and you want to become a 1,500 seat center, I don't think that is an issue. Regulation doesn't come there. Okay,
Hmm.
you basically negotiate with the landlord either in the same building or in the neighboring building. You get that. That's a small issue.
You add more seats.
The
It's
bigger
simple,
issue,
straightforward. Hmm.
that's a logistics issue. That is an infrastructure issue, and I don't think that is a problem. Okay, and a large number of the cities have really made what they call the GCC hotspots. So you have an entire area that is earmarked only for GCCs. So you move from building to building and so on. Manyata Tech Park comes to me as an example. I mean, people, they cut across buildings. So it's quite easy to scale. However, if you want to get into a new line of business, there are new approvals, there are new things. A large number of the governments have got what is known as a single window clearance. Now, the question that you asked is how soon can you start a business? In certain countries, the starting a business could be less than 24 hours. You have your documentation, you go to the website, you find out what is needed and what all is the prerequisites, you get those things done, and you're good to go. Okay, in certain other countries, your electricity load and whatever else, it possibly may take a little bit more time. It may not take 24 days, it may even take lesser time. In certain things, it may even take 24 months. I mean, that's a different story altogether. But having said that, the regulatory issue we have matured, if you ask me. We have really matured, and I don't think we come across any hurdle that has limited a particular GCC from either entering or expanding because of a regulatory issue. If anything, see, there are two words many people don't understand, and that is capacity and capability. So if you look at it, your capability is a real estate or an infrastructure issue. Do you have the capability to do this for 10 people, for 100 people, for 2,000 people, for 200 to 20,000 people? But the capacity, sorry, I'm interplaying. Do you have the capacity? Capacity you can have 10, 20, 200, 2,000, anything. But your capability, the moment you go from a 200 seat or a 200 head count GCC to a 2,000 head count GCC, you are going to add people at all segments of the leadership spectrum. So you will need that many I wouldn't say center heads, that many department heads, that many function heads, that many section heads. So it is no longer adding people at the low end of the value chain, but adding people at the high end of the value chain. So you may have a capacity problem solved very well. 100-seater becomes a 2,000-seater, basically on the real estate. But the capability to man that entire thing is where the challenge is. And that is where companies like us are coming in. So we have to ramp up the capability for these organizations. Immediately we'll have to get, for example, project leaders. Immediately we'll have to get business leaders. Immediately we'll have to get section leaders. Immediately we'll have to get domain experts, and so on. So that capability, and that is where that is the center. It is GCC. What is C? It's a capability. You have to build that capability. Capacity is not a problem. In the earlier days, capacity itself was a bottleneck. But that problem is solved. Capability is where it comes. And one center head is there. And let us say that the business grows big. So now it's not a new word, it's there earlier also, fractal organization. So one particular GCC of 2,000 people, if they become, let us say, 5,000 people, that one center head may not be in a position to manage all those 5,000 people. So he'll have to have many people. His second layer, and that's where the leadership bench has to be built up to scale up to that. So we use three words. It is SSC: the size, the scale, and the complexity. Size is a small problem. It's a capacity problem. The size of the center. Scale is also linked with size, but it's linked with capability, complexity and capability. Because can you scale up from 100 to 1,000 in 6 months? The real estate can enable you, but the capability may not enable you. You cannot scale up that much. You can immediately get seats. For example, if another floor is available, you can scale up. But can that floor be kept with leaders unless you have a leadership bench? That is where a large number of organizations are doing forecasting. Workforce planning is integrated into the expansion of the GCC itself. So they look at what is the talent that is needed in the 6-month time frame, in the 8-month time frame. And some of the GCCs are even outsourcing that to other companies with the clause where they're saying after so many years that build, own, and transfer. So you
BOT.
become ancillary, BOT, you operate it, and then after some time they all will become part of my entity. So they're
Correct.
handling the capability constraint that way. They may not have that capability. There is some other company which has got a capability. So they come in as a subcontractor, and after some time they get absorbed. And we work
Right.
with both of them. We work with both of them.
Beautiful. Anand, do you see India as the GCC hotspot being disrupted over a period of time? Because, like we saw back in the day, we delivered the cost arbitrage. Over the years, costs started increasing. People moved to different geographies within India to continue with the cost arbitrage. But then, as we discussed, there is only a certain limit till which you can play the cost game, right? There is only a limit till which you can play the value game. There is only a limit till which you can play the creativity, innovation, leadership game. So, what is the next bar that we need to raise ourselves to remain relevant in the GCC game?
I don't see that getting disrupted as far as India is concerned in the near future, because our talent, our leadership competency is really very high, very very high. So even if you look at in US, a large number of the companies are headed by people of Indian origin. So the leadership competency, our ability to manage chaos is unimaginable, is possibly understated. For example, if I were put in a particular center, I mean, it's like driving in Delhi traffic. I mean, I know exactly who's going to cut me. I know that managing under chaos. So our ability to manage, I mean, many years ago, we all read this theory of constraints. More the constraints, better the Indian. So we have the ability to manage unpredictability, expect the unexpected really very well, and that will become an increased advantage for us. I don't see that happening. While I know that our cost arbitrage can get eaten away with low cost centers. I mean, I've got my own nephew in Poland. I mean, he's doing phenomenally well. But I know that Poland, Mexico, Philippines, or any of these other centers which are becoming a threat from a cost arbitrage point of view will never be a threat in the near future from a value arbitrage point of view. And those places will continue to have people of Indian origin because of our leadership competency. And that's where organizations like us come in, because we'll have to continue to build that pipeline, continue to build that leadership bench so that we can reproduce these people across the spectrum. And cost can be anywhere. If you look at it, I mean, the earlier tier 2 city is now become a tier 1 city. Many years ago, Hyderabad was a tier 2 city. Pune was a tier 2 city. Gurgaon was a tier 2 city. But now the tier 2 city has become a tier 1. And now getting that, for example, Jaipur is a tier 2 city today. Mysore is a tier 2 city today. But that will become so evolved that will become a tier 1 city. So cost arbitrage, we can go from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. The quality of life and the quality of leadership and the quality of talent, if we were to get across all these centers, which we are continuing to do today, but it still is a challenge. It still is a challenge. A lot of people, the chances of you getting a high quality leadership talent in a tier one city is far higher than in a tier two city at this point in time. Having said that, because of talent mobility, I don't think that is becoming a challenge. So if we keep our focus on the leadership competency, the managerial competency, and I think we will be able to buffer
Sure.
ourselves and have a sustainable business.
Yeah. It actually gets me to think, Anand, that while you mentioned about these emerging cities and how a lot of GCCs, whether it is Jaipur, Coimbatore, Mysore coming in, um, what's your take on the future of work? What is it going to be remote? Will it be hybrid? How is it going to play out? Because think of it that way, if people don't get to the center and they're still working remote, then whether it's a 500-seater center or a 1,000 or a 1,500, do you see some of these processes with a lot of digital transformation enabling the workforce to work remote? Or do you still see them being in office, sitting in the center to deliver solutions?
No, no, the centers have all evolved in that. They are what is known as a hot seat. So what you basically do is, you plug into a Bangalore center and you plug out your traveling, you go to a Gurgaon center. I mean, you have business continuity because everything is there in the cloud. So the location per se is not a constraint. And work from home could be there for some time, but you definitely need to come to the office, whichever office is your preference, no problem.
So
But you need to come to
representing
office,
a Gen Z, Anand, sorry, but representing a Gen Z, the question is, why do I need to come to an office
come
if
to
I can
a
do the
office.
same thing from home?
You cannot do the same thing at home for three reasons. First thing is you don't have your camaraderie. Whatever, see, I'll tell you. I mean, if I were to have a cup of coffee with you, our chemistry will be much better than what we are doing on the virtual. So that human
Accepted,
chemistry you definitely need. So that's the first
right?
reason. The second thing is I use this phrase in my leadership building. Our conversations move up the value chain the moment you have a formal conversation in an informal setting and an informal conversation in a formal setting. Our camaraderie, the level of conversation increases, completely increases. For example, if we were discussing whatever we are discussing over the coffee table, over the cafeteria, we will have a lot more informality and a lot more bonding. That's the second reason. But the third reason is where we started off with the support system I may not have. IT support system I may not have. I may not have the courier pickup ability in that particular place. I mean, for example, much earlier, this was almost 20 years ago, I had a remote office at my home. My house was designated as a courier pickup and drop facility for those days, Blue Dart. I had a personal copier, I had a personal fax machine, I had a personal whatever, but I still did not have the A3 size printer. I still did not have whatever. So IT infrastructure, and what I may use the word, the support infrastructure, you need to come to the office, and that companies are saying, come 1 day in a week or come 2 days in a week. So let me summarize. Why do you need to have hybrid? You need to have hybrid for the sake of bonding, for the sake of collaboration, for the sake of increasing your value in the teams itself, and more so, it is going to be humanly impossible for you to reproduce your support infrastructure across things. And although a lot of this AnyDesk and other things are available for you to provide support across sectors, but there will be focuses that are there which you get benefit once you come to an office.
Got it. Beautiful. Now, since you started with the beautiful number of three, my next question has three parts to it. There are a lot of people who like to apply to GCCs, right? As freshers, as early talent. What are some of the key competencies that one needs to have to apply at an entry level? Question 1A. 1B is at a mid level. Let's say someone's worked in industry and now wants to move to a GCC. And third is at a leadership level. So, what are some broadly? I know there's a long list, but what would be your top three under each category? Entry, mid, and leadership.
So if you look at our CAT exam is a very good exam for me to take as a base. CAT exam has got three basic aptitude tests. Okay, one is quant. Okay, and that is like a real killer for non-STEM people. Okay, so you keep that aside. But there are two other things: VARC, that is verbal ability, and reading comprehension. That is very, very necessary because there's a lot of documents that the person has to read, understand. A lot of conversation that the person will have to read and understand, and his or her ability to articulate that in a concise way. One big complaint in the earlier days that was against our people is, why do you take 10 minutes to say what you can say in 2 sentences? So our verbal ability has to improve and our reading comprehension has to. We need to read the document and quickly get the gist of it. So that is VARC. Okay, the other one that they will have to really get is DILR. And what is DILR? Data interpretation and logical reasoning.
Listening.
So data, and this is different from quant. So you need to have that, and that the level of this competency can depend on the level at which you're applying. So you need to have basic data interpretation and logical reasoning skills, basic verbal ability and reading comprehension, and quant ability that is required. Depending on the level, at the basic level, you'll have to have what I would call a CAT level. And as you move up the value chain, you can go from beginner to proficient and move up. But these are basic. If I were to add two more, I would add critical thinking. Very, very important. The Watson Blazer kind of a test. Critical thinking. Their critical thinking will have to be really up to the mark and way above the median percentile. And the most important is a cognitive reflection. Their ability to respond to the environment and really be quick on their feet. Yes, Sahil.
Got it. Okay, super. And maybe I know we're running short on time, but one last question. What do you think that or maybe what do you think that MNCs could really learn from Indian GCCs?
Oh, the big thing that they can learn is we are an underutilized talent, and our agility, our learning agility is really phenomenal. So you take a person, and the person will be really a novice or a wet behind the ears in the beginning, but you see the way he or she scales up. So that is what they need to learn. But what our talent also needs to learn is,
Hmm.
everybody thinks that they are a GCC material. I use a simple phrase which I also give in my keynote addresses is, deserve before you desire.
Desire.
Everybody desires a big job because the compensation in a GCC is completely different from a compensation in an IT company. So they all desire. But the question is, do they deserve? So how do they build their capability? They build their capability by getting their basics in verbal ability and reading comprehension, their basics in critical thinking, their basics in cognitive reflection, their basics in data interpretation and logical reasoning. Once they have that, because almost all the GCCs, either before recruitment or at the time of fitment, they give these aptitude tests, and they will have to be prepared. And bulk of my work is, a large number of them have got recruited because of their technical competency. But they are now moved up the ladder. They're recruited as engineers, individual contributors. Now they're made man managers. How do they move up that? When they're individual contributors, they may not have required that high level of critical thinking or that high level of cognitive reflection or that high level of data interpretation and logical reasoning. But now they need that. They may not have needed that high level of verbal ability and reading comprehension when they were individual individual contributors. Now they need that. So that is where the ability to move people up, if you take Ram Charan's model, from managing self to managing others to managing managers to managing a business to managing an enterprise,
Enterprise.
that fast track will happen, and that's what will enable a GCC to move up the value chain.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Anand. This was yet another master class, and I'm sure as people watch this video later on and even listen to it on Spotify. It is immense amount of knowledge that you've shared and great learnings. Thank you so much for being on Quick Bites
Thank
with
you.
HR.
Thank you for having me. All the best for our listeners who will be listening to the thing. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they can reach out to me for any further questions.
Beautiful. Anybody who has questions, who watches the video, can put it on the chat itself, and it'll continue on the thread on LinkedIn. And Anand will be happy to connect and answer. Anand, thank you so much,
Thank
and take
you.
good care of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to be back next week, same time, 8 p.m. Another Monday, another guest. But today, signing off. Thank you so much,
Thank
Anand.
you.